Hi, I'm Matthew. Please stand for the singing of O Canada.
Is Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, who was born in Guelph, Ontario on November 30th, 1872. He was interested in the military at a very young age and began writing poetry while a student at Guelph College Institute. He joined the Highfield Cadet Corps at 14 and at 17 enlisted in the Milta Field Battery Command by his father. At the age of 16, McCrae was the first Guelph student to win a scholarship to the University of Toronto. He was forced to take a year off after attending the university for 3 years due to severe asthma attacks which reoccurred throughout his life. The South African War began in October 1899, where McCrae felt it was his duty to fight. McCrae spent a year with his unit after he sailed to Africa in December. When he left South Africa, he had mixed feelings about war. He was convinced of the need to fight for his country, but was shocked at the poor treatment the injured and sick soldiers were receiving. McCrae reassigned from the 1st Brigade of Artillery in 1904 after being promoted to captain and then major. He was not involved with the military again until 1914. In Montreal, 1901, McCrae resumed his studies in pathology. August 4th, 1914, Britain declared war on Germany. Canada, as a member of the British Empire, was automatically at war, and its citizens from all across the land responded quickly. Within 3 weeks, 45,000 Canadians had rushed to join up. McCrae among them. He was appointed brigade surgeon to the 1st Brigade of the Canadian Field Artillery with the rank of major and second in command. April 1915, McCrae was in the trenches near Ypres, Belgium, in the area traditionally called Flanders. Some of the heaviest fighting of the First World War took place there during that was known as the Second Battlefield of Ypres. On April 22nd, the Germans used deadly chlorine gas against the troops in desperate attempt to break the stalemate. Despite the the liberating effects of the gas, Canadian soldiers fought relentlessly and held line for another 16 days. In the trenches, McCrae tended hundreds of wounded soldiers every day. He was surrounded by the dead and the dying. In a letter to his mother, he wrote the Battle of Ypres. The day before he wrote his famous poem, one of McCrae's closest friends was killed in the fighting and buried in a makeshift grave with a simple wooden cross. Wild poppies were already beginning to bloom between the crosses, marking the many graves. Unable to help his friends or any of the others who had died, McCrae gave them a voice to his poem. It was the second to last poem he was to write. McCrae was deeply affected by the fighting and losses in France. He became bitter and disillusioned. Writing letters and poetry allowed McCrae to escape temporarily from the pressures of his administrative duties at the hospital. His last poem, The Anxious Dead, echoed the theme of In Flanders Fields, but was never as popular as the earlier poem. During the summer of 1917, McCrae was troubled by severe asthma attacks and occasionally bouts of bronchitis. He became very ill in January 1918 and diagnosed his condition as pneumonia. January 28th, after an illness of 5 days, McCrae died of pneumonia and meningitis. The day he fell ill, he learned he had been appointed consultant physician to the 1st British Army, the first Canadian so honored. In Flanders Fields was first published in England's Punch magazine, December 1915. Within months, this poem came to symbolize the sacrifices of all who were fighting in the First World War. In part because of the poem's popularity, the poppy was adopted as the flower of remembrance for the war dead of Britain, France, the United States, Canada, and other Commonwealth countries. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row. That marker place and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead short days ago. We lived, felt on, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae.
In today's society, we have so many things going on that we sometimes forget about those other things that often don't seem as important. This is unfortunately what happens with Remembrance Day.
We as young people all know about it because of learning in school and because of the poppies we see people wearing. But we don't fully appreciate it for what it is. It's sometimes difficult for us to connect to it perhaps as deeply as we would. The war happened so long ago, and the people that are truly connected to it are no longer as connected to us. Time has erased part of our memories.
This is why It is even more important each year and throughout the year to make time to remember why November 11th is a special day. We understand that people fought for our country and that people continue to fight for our today. We know and understand that we fought for our freedom and to prevent others from taking away our basics rights as humans. We tend to ignore how special and privileged we are here in Canada because we rarely at the center of any problems. We forget that even though our lives are pretty great, others around us do not always have it so easy.
This is why soldiers and the military continue to fight against those who wish to take away our ability to live happily and freely. We have tremendous respect for the members of the military, but we often just think of them as soldiers. We should remember that they are also parents, children, husbands, wives, brothers and sisters, and often so much more. They do not simply wear a uniform, but represent all of us that live peacefully back at home. These seemingly simple people are doing extraordinary things. They sacrifice their own lives for others, and that is something that must be remembered. The numbers of people who have given their lives for us must not be trivialized.
We all may know of someone that perhaps has served in the military or is serving at some level, and that it makes it a little more real to some of us, but it's still hard and to fully appreciate. My great uncle and aunt both served in the army, and I am grateful that they are still alive. I thank all the men and women who serve our country on a daily basis.
As this day reminds us to remember the people from the past, we must also ensure that those brave and selfless people who serve are also remembered. They often return from serving safe and alive, but can never completely leave what they experience behind them. They carry with them for the rest of their lives the mental and physical scars of war. And we should be more aware to better help and support them. The troops fighting today around the world against terrorism or helping other countries must not be overlooked. Thanks to the major sacrifices made in the past, we live in a truly remarkable country, and thanks to the continued efforts of today, soldiers we hopefully will continue to do so for a long time to come.
So even if you may not know anyone directly connected to the military in the past or the present, and even though it has been such a long time ago in a place that is thousands of miles away, we are still connected.
We are tied to one another through the humanity, and this we must always take the time to say thank you and to remember.
On Remembrance Day, we commemorate the military veterans of World War I by wearing a poppy on the left side of our shirt, closest to our hearts. Although, not many people know the true meaning of the poppy and how it was adopted as a symbol of remembrance. Hello, I am Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. Just yesterday, one of my closest friends and fellow servicemen, Alexis Helmer, passed away in battle. The war has destroyed and blasted the beautiful countryside to be fought over again and again. The landscape quickly turned to fields of mud, making it impossible for any form of life or plant to grow. It made the surroundings look bleak and lifeless. Whenever I feel like there is no purpose in living a life without a spire, I look at the little sparks of hope that grow resiliently in Flanders fields. Vibrant red Flanders poppies grow by the thousands and stand tall even in the worst of winds, but yet seem so delicate and fragile. Somehow, they seem to be unharmed by the fact of what has felt like a lifetime of destruction and chaos was happening on the same soil that they grew from. These very flowers I consider to be the toughest things alive, because they were one of the only things left to be purely pristine after the war.
Death of a young
Their
friend,
natural color of
a
light
protege
red,
of
giving
McCrae.
an
McCrae
unexplainable
conducts the burial
that
service.
One day, this will all be over, and that all people can continue living the lives that they choose to live without violence.
It's a nice thought to see him perhaps in a one quiet moment resting, thinking about his friend, and
they represent the symbol of aspire and remembrance to all military veterans lying in their grave. I dedicate this poem in Flanders Fields to you, Alexis, and to all the people who have been affected by this war. After John McCrae wrote the poem in Flanders Fields, the red poppy became the flower used as a symbol of the end of the war and the beginning of a better future, and as a symbol of remembrance.
The Holocaust was among the most tragic events in world history. This event was a major part of World War II that lasted between 1941 and 1945, while World War II itself lasted between 1939 and 1945. Hitler, Germany's leader's goal out of the war was to expand Germany and make it to what he believed was a perfect nation. In this part of the war, Nazi Germans captured members of the Jewish community and forced them into concentration camps. There, they made the victims work under harsh conditions or used them for experiments. Over 6 million people died from the Holocaust. A vast majority were killed, but the few that survived graciously shared their stories for our generation and generations to come to fully appreciate this sad time in history. One of those survivors was named Janine Burke. She was born in Belgium, a country that was supposed to stay neutral during the war, though Hitler invaded the area regardless. She was Jewish, so she stayed in captivity in a woman's house without her parents. She didn't even know the homeowner's name, which proves how lifeless her childhood was. She wasn't allowed to leave her house ever since she was brought there by her father. This day was also the last time she ever got to see her father. She said, "I was never mistreated, though I was never loved." She further explains that what she means by that is she got the necessities to survive, but she always felt as if they kept her hidden, only because the Nazis would kill the women who hid her, as well as herself. "I don't think of all the misery, but all the beauty that still remains." This passage was from Anne Frank's diary. Anne Frank was a Jewish girl who was born in Germany on June 12, 1929. In 1933, she and her family moved to the Netherlands in search for a new life. Though in 1940, the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. When Anne Frank was 13, she received a diary that she wrote in before she went to hiding. They went to hiding July 6, 1942. She called this hiding place the Secret Annex. Throughout the 2 years and 2 months she was in hiding, she wrote about her fears and doubts. On August 4, 1944, Anne Frank was arrested and found, then sent to a concentration camp. She then died from a spreading disease called typhus in March 1945. Her diary was published and is now read by many people, giving us an insight into the life of a victim of the Holocaust. Elie Wiesel was another Holocaust survivor. He was born in Romania in 1927. When he was 15, he was put into a concentration camp. Wiesel's life was spared with the expectation that he would perform labor so long he was able to. He survived, but the rest of his family did not. He was released at the end of World War II and later decided to write a novel based on his experiences. This novel is called Night and was further made into a movie. Nicholas Winton was a man who felt what the Nazis were doing was wrong. He saved 669 Jewish children from being put into a concentration camp between 1938 and 1939. He took them, changed their identities, and then sent them on a train around Europe where he thought they would be safe. These children would have likely died not saved by Winton. He passed away July 1st, 2015. Many memorials and museums were created about the Holocaust. There are multiple historical sites in Europe displaying artifacts, and some are in the concentration camps themselves. One of these museums is in the United States and is called the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. There they show all the victims of the Holocaust as well as some of the survivors. They also light candles to remember all affected. It is important to not acknowledge not only the survivors, but also the millions of people whose lives were taken away. This is why we remember them on Remembrance Day. We have learned from their hardships and negative experiences that shape our world today. Thank you.
Germans grabbed my arm. I had to make a fist. They slammed the arm onto a table, and with a hypodermic needle, every little dot was injected until it became, in my case, the number B7648. In the middle of the night, they kicked down the door. They were yelling and screaming. My mom and dad were at a loss. They grabbed me to protect me, especially from the German shepherds, which were pretty much at my level. They took us out on the truck. I, of course, was scared. I was confused. I had no way of doing anything to escape. We were taken off and we were greeted by people who had an emaciated, hollow look. They really moved like zombies. My father was forced to work repairing the electrified fences. My mother made iron plates that went under the military boots. I, miraculously, was given the chance to work in the agriculture department. The food ration that you received was a single loaf of bread, a watery cabbage soup, intentionally non-nutritional. That was your total food for the week. As far as I was concerned, I had an escape mechanism from that level of starvation by stealing food as much as I could. The way I stole it was by putting holes in my pocket, let the seats fall down to my ankles where the pant leg had been tightened up. I was able to pass inspection by being patted down. Had I been detected, I would have become what the Germans called Sunday's entertainment, the execution by hanging. One of the saddest moments in the ghetto was that when my dad came home, laid down since there was no furniture, and simply expired. The sidewalk would be littered by the corpses of those that had passed away the night before. And they had a wagon pulled by 2 or 3 people come and collect the corpses. That to me was more painful than seeing my dad give up his life or pass away. What will be done to him after he passed? When I went to work the next morning, I did see him laying naked, waiting to be picked up by this wagon, taking to a grave where already several people had been buried, and plop, you fall down into a heap of bodies. That was painful. One Nazi dragged my mom away and he said, "You belong over there on the other side." I didn't call her mommy or anything like this. There was no time to do this. I realized very quickly to see my mother again is not ever going to happen. They shaved our hair. They pushed us through an archway and doused us with a painful liquid. We were washed for about 10 seconds, and I'm pushed against a large building with a huge smokestack and an enormous flame and a most obnoxious odor that we could not recognize. We were packed in with the density of standing room only. You could hardly move. We hear a noise and realize that looking up, 2 airplanes were circling the train. They had circular insignias, predominantly French fighter planes, and also accompanied by British fighter planes. They misrecognized and designated as apparently returning German military. And that was my good fortune to be at the very front of the wagon and not be in the trajectory of the machine gun fired when they had made 2 runs. We lost about 30 to 40% of the inhabitants of each wagon. With all the carnage, the train went on. Those of us who could survive on a piece of bread and a bowl of soup simply hung in. Suicides into the electrified wires, finding maybe an excuse to be shot to end their life, was not unusual. On Friday, April 11, at 3:15, we hear a very unfamiliar noise, a mechanical noise. I see a tank coming up. Being familiar with German insignia, I didn't see that. What I saw instead, of all things, was a white Star of David. The commander wore a uniform of the United States Third Army, headed by General George Patton.
My name is Olivia and my father is in the military police.
He was a warrant officer in the Canadian Armed Forces. He retired this past month after serving 32 years. My father's career in the military has brought us to all parts of the world. I've traveled to over 20 countries and lived in over 5 locations. I was born in Paris, France, and moved back and forth to Europe. While being overseas, my dad brought me to visit a concentration camp in Belgium. It was the most weary visit I have ever experienced. My dad explained to me the awful things that were done down there up until the Allies liberated the camp in World War II. I also visited Dieppe, France, the same beach where the Dieppe raid took place in 1942. Almost 1,000 Canadian soldiers died there. Today, people can now enjoy this beautiful beach thanks to the sacrifices our soldiers have made. Canadians are well appreciated across Europe. Monuments like Vimy Ridge in France and Passchendaele, Belgium, have been dedicated as a tribute to all Canadian soldiers who have served during World War I. I was lucky enough to see these monuments. Being a military child has its pros and cons. Yes, I get to see new places, eat new foods, meet new people, experience new cultures, but I also have to say goodbye to the friends I've made and start all over again. The most challenging part was saying goodbye to my father when he left for almost a year. My dad has been to Bosnia, Afghanistan, Haiti, and many other operational deployments. While he was away, we communicated by Skype, FaceTime, or satellite telephone. His K9, Rin Tin Tin, would always be next to him. I would look forward to those phone calls and count the days until his return. The last tour he did in Afghanistan, he got me involved. My mom and I collected supplies from students in schools in Quebec City and sent them on a military flight to Afghanistan to help reconstruct the schools. Throughout the years, a poem has been dedicated to military children, as we are often in the shadows of our mothers and fathers. I would like to read it to you. It's called The Dandelion. Dandelions put down roots almost anywhere, and it is impossible to destroy. It's an unpretentious plant, yet good-looking. It's a survivor in broad range of climates. Military children bloom everywhere the winds carry them. They are hardy and upright. Their roots are strong, cultivated deeply in the culture of the army, planted swiftly and surely. They're ready to fly in breezes that take them to new adventures, new lands, and new friends. Military children are well-rounded, culturally aware, tolerant, and extremely resilient. They have learned from an early age that home is where their hearts are, that a good friend can be found in every corner of the world. They learn to survive means to adapt, that the door that closes one chapter of their life opens up to a new and exciting adventure full of new friends and new experiences. I stand here today to honor Chris Kariajanis, a graduate from the Laval Senior Academy, killed in Afghanistan in 2007. It is important to rally his name and honor him, as he is a veteran of our own. We will remember you. For those soldiers that did return home, it is important to raise awareness about them. It is vital that we give our support to the physical and mentally wounded, keeping in mind that not all scars are visible. And always remember what their families have sacrificed. You never accept losing a loved one, you just learn how to live with it. Veterans like Chris Kariajanis gave up their privileges so people like us could have them. May you rest in peace, Chris Kariajanis, lest we forget. My name is Olivia Catherine Abag, and I am a military child who is proud to have sacrificed. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, je me souviens.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Paul Kavanagh. I'm the founder of Operation Veteran. 100 years ago, 4 Canadian divisions, led by Sir Arthur Currie, attacked Vimy Ridge, and we took it. German and British troops had attempted to take Vimy Ridge for 2 years, basically, and they lost over 200,000 men. We took it in 4 days. 7,000 wounded, 3,598 killed. At that ridge, 3 weeks later, the 10th Battalion, or if you wish, the Calgary Highlanders, hosted a very special Thanksgiving service. And we have the original hymn that was read at that service in honor of the victory of Vimy Ridge and in honor of all Canadian casualties. So I'm going to read it to you now. Hymn used by the 10th Battalion after Vimy Ridge at their Thanksgiving service, May 13, 1917. Great God of nations, at whose will proud scepter empires wax and wane. Defend their empires, people still. Unsheath thy sword for us again. For liberty and right we stand. O God, arise, stretch forth thy hand. Great God of battle, still their heart, who serve by land and air and sea. With honor, let them play their part. With duty, let their service be. 'Gainst cruelty and wrong we fight. O God, arise, put forth thy might. O God of pity, be thine eye, where lurks the sunk, death-dealing mines, where blazing rooftops, trees flush the sky, in reeking trenches and shattered lines, for motherhood and king we fight. O God, arise, maintain the right. O God of mercy, be our shield, and hear our dear ones far away. For them we stand on blood-stained fields. For us they wait at home and pray. To thee we turn, to thee we cry. O God, lead on to victory. Amen. So this was the original hymn. As I said, recited, prayed, sung, we don't know, 100 years ago, May 13, 1917. Thank you very much.
Good morning, my name is Sam Beldy, and today I will be talking about the Battle of the Vimy Ridge. On April 9th, 2017 marked the 100th anniversary of Canada's involvement in the Battle of the Vimy Ridge, precisely located in the Nord-Pas-de-Calais region of France. The main combatants were 4 divisions of the Canadian Corps and a division of the Britain Army, totaling 170,000 men, against a powerful German 6th Army. This battle precisely took place between April 9th to 12th in the year of 1917 during the First World War. The location was considered a German stronghold, meaning that the German army had secured the area and maintained control over this exact location. Both Britain and France had jointly tried to recapture the area, but had failed greatly in their attempts. Thousands of men from both countries had been captured or killed. Canada, being part of the Allied forces, was asked to join the offensive and prepare for its effort to free the Vimy Ridge from German occupation. On Monday, April 9th at 5 a.m., the Canadian divisions, led by Lieutenant Sir Arthur Currie, hid under the ridge, preparing for their offensive. All 4 divisions had a clear objective: strike the enemy with a swift offensive and conquer the territory of the Vimy Ridge. It was a call to be very strategic and to understand where the enemy was hiding. They even made a detailed map so that they knew exactly where and how to attack. At 5:30 a.m., artillery from the roar of Canadian cannons had been used with the offensive of our brave men rushing towards the enemy. It was the first wave of attack. By 6:15, the Germans' forward defenses were taken. The 1st Division headed to a location called Hill 145, which the Germans had also taken. By 7 a.m., the Germans' defenses were cleared, but came at a heavy cost of many wounded Canadian soldiers. At 11 a.m., Another location, Hill 135, was in the hands of the Canadians. Then, by 2 p.m., the German second line had been captured. All that was left was another territory called the Pimple. It was the northern tip of the ridge and was defended by German-Prussian guards. At 5 a.m. on April 12th, the Canadians attacked the Pimple with huge artillery. The 10th Brigade forwarded and met up with violent head-to-head combat with the enemy. By 6 a.m., the position had been taken. Vimy was successfully won by Canada and Britain. But like in every war, it had come at a heavy cost, with a total of 10,602 casualties, with 3,598 killed and 7,000 wounded. The Canadian Corps Division had moved 5 kilometers and taken the Vimy Ridge, along with 4,000 prisoners. The Canadians and their British ally had won. They had accomplished what the French and British failed to do. Although the battle itself is not considered as one of their biggest accomplishments, it did mark the first time that Canada's military had united soldiers from across the country. It was also the first time that Canada had been recognized for its effort overseas. For this, the Vimy Memorial in France is Canada's largest war memorial. It is located on the highest ridge where it recognizes the sacrifice and the contribution of our Canadian soldiers who fought bravely during this battle. During this time of remembrance, let us pay tribute to the men and women who have fought for our freedom and for those who gave up their tomorrows so that we can have our todays. Thank you.
My name is Lord Tudhope, and I served in the Second World War with the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion, which was attached to the 6th Airborne Division in Britain. I joined the forces in January of 1944 at the Horse Palace in Toronto. It just seemed to be the right thing. Your patriotic duty, as they called it. And I volunteered for the paratroops and took my jump training in Shiloh, Manitoba. From there we went to Halifax. I got on a boat, spent a couple of months in England getting ready to go over the Rhine. That was one of the biggest events of the Second World War, I guess, and it was the final push towards the end. Always nerve-wracking, but we were ready to jump. We jumped in training quite a bit, so it kind of came naturally. But anytime you go into a battle like that, I'm sure everybody's got butterflies in their stomach. We each had a rifle. It was daylight. We dropped at about 600 feet. So you weren't long in the air, but there was a lot of firing from below. And as it happened, because of that firing, I got a little off my target and missed my drop zone. I landed in a farmer's back field on a clothesline, which was nerve-wracking a bit. By the time I got untangled on the clothesline and got my chute released, I headed for the drop area, which I made. And we went from there.
Here stands Nazi-dominated Europe at the start of 1944. But in this one year, the Red Army in the east, the Allies in the south and west have marched from Cassino to Faenza, from Kiev and Leningrad to Budapest and Warsaw, from Cherbourg to the Rhine.
There was a lot of heavy fire guns, big guns. They're 88s or whatever they call them. Machine guns, rifles, of course. Once I was discharged from the army, I tried to forget most of because it was a nerve-wracking business. Remembrance Day is important not only for us, but for the younger generation, I believe, to let them know some of the things that happened, or try and remember the things that happened during the wars. Very important for them, and of course very important for us too, because we don't really want to remember, but we have to remember those people that gave up their lives so that we're a free country. And it means a lot. It should mean a lot to everybody.
My name is Anastasia Karajanis, and I'll be talking about my uncle, Surgeon Chris Karajanis. At the age of 12, my uncle discovered and enjoyed the Canadian Air Cadets. From the first day he went there, he realized right away that this is what he wanted to do in his life. He was very determined to do everything that the Air Cadet program offered. He quickly set his goals to win the Glider Pilot Scholarship, to win the Lord Strathcona Medal given to the best cadet, as well as reaching rank of Warrant Officer First Class, which is the highest rank a cadet could have. He not only achieved all those goals, but he also participated in almost every activity and summer camp that was available to him. After his cadet career was over, he graduated CEGEP and went to join the regular forces of the Canadian Army at the age of 20. After graduating from basic training in Saint Jean, he was assigned to the 2nd Battalion of Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry in Edmonton. While he was in the 2nd Battalion, he went on peacekeeping missions to Bosnia and Kosovo, where one of his principal missions was to protect Bosnian and Serb students while they went to school. He also took part in missions to deliver humanitarian aid and provide security at roadside checkpoints looking for illegal weapons. My uncle's primary goal in the Army was to become an airborne paratrooper. In order to do that, he had to switch to the 3rd Battalion of Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. During his time in the 3rd Battalion, he also participated in the Canadian Forces shooting team. He was also one of the youngest members to join the Canadian Forces Skyhawks parachute team. During the years, he had the opportunity to travel around the world for competitions and skydiving shows with the Skyhawks, where he had accumulated over 700 jumps with the Army and on his own. After he finished his time with the Skyhawks, he went back to his unit where he did another mission in Kosovo, but this time he had achieved the rank of Sergeant in C Company Parachute. Since my uncle had traveled many places in the world, some of which were active war zones, he realized really quickly how lucky we were to live in a country like Canada, and how important it was for him to continue to serve his country that had given him all the opportunities and freedom to do what he wanted in life. He loved Canada so much, he had a huge Canadian flag on his wall in his house in Edmonton. In 2007, my uncle's next mission was in Afghanistan. He was sent to the Panjwai district of Kandahar province, where the Taliban were extremely active. During that time, his main mission was to clear the Taliban from villages and provide a secure environment where schools, hospitals, roads, and other infrastructure could be built. The goals Chris and his unit had were to provide a stable and free way to life so that Afghanistan could one day become a functional nation. On June 20th, 2007, after 5 months in Afghanistan, my uncle and 2 other soldiers, Corporal Steven Buzan and Private Joel Weeb, were killed by a roadside bomb while on patrol. Our family, friends, members of Chris's unit, and the students and staff at LSA have remembered my uncle and all the other soldiers that have served, been wounded, or killed in the service of Canada on every Remembrance Day. As a person who was indirectly affected by war and conflict, I can tell you how important it is that we never forget the sacrifices that Canadian soldiers have made in the past, present, and possibly in the future, so that we may have the life and opportunities and freedoms that we enjoy today. Since then, his former school, now called LSA, has done many things to honor his memory and to encourage students to be active citizens in their community and to continue to serve their country's citizens in their own way. They do this through volunteer work, mentor programs, and helping people in other countries by donating their time, raising money, or providing essential items for school and other communities' needs.
where a Silver Cross mother is chosen to lay a wreath in Ottawa. They stand alone in grief, representing all mothers whose children have died in military service. This year's Silver Cross mother lost her youngest son in Afghanistan. Sergeant Chris Karagianis was just 31, and just before he was due to come home, his vehicle hit an improvised explosive device. Michael Couture looks back at his life and his mother's loss.
He was not afraid, but he be careful, always be careful.
Nikki Pasaris' youngest son had a thirst for adventure. Before joining the Canadian military, his hobbies included skydiving and rock climbing.
He even went to South Africa once and he's swimming with sharks. It's easy. What can I say?
He joined the Army in 2003 and was quickly promoted to the rank of sergeant. Chris Karagianis was part of the elite Skyhawks, Canada's only military parachute demonstration team. Soon thereafter, he was sent to Afghanistan as part of our country's contribution to the war on terror. It was something he was always proud to be part of.
I remember he told me, "Mom, I'm so proud. I'm helping people here, I'm helping the children, and they're building schools."
Then, on June 20th, 2007, just one day before he was supposed to go home, Pasaris got the call every military mother fears.
The minute that I hear the phone, I had a bad feeling.
Chris and two others were in a light vehicle similar to this one on a simple administrative task when they hit a roadside bomb. Pasaris was given the Silver Cross when her son's casket came home.
That metal, it's a very small metal. It's small, but very, very, very heavy, and no mother wants to have it.
Still, she'll wear the medal proudly as the National Silver Cross Mother this Remembrance Day. And when she lays the wreath, she'll be thinking of all mothers who have lost a son or daughter in battle.
We share the same pain. I know how they feel. And what I say is to all of them to be strong and go on, because it's not only our sons make us proud, we're supposed to be strong to keep our sons proud of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Captain Jurgen Miranda, formerly 3rd Battalion PPCLI, currently posted at the Canadian Forces Leadership and Recruit School at St. Jean. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about Remembrance Day, its importance, and how it focuses on how we affect everyday's lives, day to day. Throughout the First and Second World War, hundreds of thousands of Canadians gave their lives to protect honor, to protect our freedom, to protect our everyday values we as Canadian citizens enjoy every single day. The poppy symbolizes the blood. It symbolizes the freedom that so many Canadians died for and fought for during all of those great conflicts. Moving forward from Canada, we saw conflicts throughout Asia, throughout the Balkans, most recently into Afghanistan, and now into Iraq. Remembrance Day is about sacrifice, it's about temperance, and it's about reflection. A time where we as Canadians can take a second and be thankful for everything that those men and women died for. It's easy to forget the soldiers because we're not involved with them day to day. It's easy to not see that soldiers form part of today's society, and that it wasn't just soldiers that gave their lives. It was also their families that supported them. Wives, daughters, husbands, brothers, sisters, boyfriends, girlfriends. They were all directly involved with the war. They all were directly involved with protecting our freedom, protecting our values, and protecting our identity as Canadians as we move forward in the world. I want to give a quick little motto here that came from Veterans Affairs Canada on the importance of remembering. It states, "We must remember. If we do not, the sacrifice of those 100,000 Canadian lives will be meaningless. They died for us, for their homes and families and friends, for collections of traditions they cherished and a future that they believed in. They died for Canada. The meaning of their sacrifice rests with our collective national consciousness. Our future is their monument. Too often these days, we hear polluted media where we take diversity and look at it as a weakness that tears us apart. As we remember, let's not forget that diversity is what makes us strong as a nation, what makes us proud to be Canadians, that we each celebrate our civil liberties together, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity. Together we are strong, and we remember the sacrifice of those that came before us. We remember.
The main reason we wear the poppy in Remembrance Day is to remember those who have lost their lives in war, and because they were the flowers that grew and bloomed in the battlefields at the end of World War I, which the poem Flanders Field referenced. Speaking of Flanders Field, the poem is John McCrae. The poet is John McCrae. He was a surgeon and soldier during World War I. The inspiration of the poem goes way back, 1 year after the global conflict, and in another war known as the Second Battle of Ypres. He treated the wounded in a confined 8x8 bunker. His close friend and military pal, Lieutenant Alexis Helmer, was killed in the conflict, and his burial inspired the iconic poem, which was written soon after the end of the conflict. Now moving on to the poppy money. The poppy money you invest is forwarded directly to the aid of veterans, including those in the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and their respected families that are in need. The funds will be allocated on multiple aspects, such as housing accommodation and care facilities for the veterans, accessibility modifications for the disabled, and support of cadet units, etc., etc. The poppy itself is a reminder that we must strive for peace. It isn't a glorification of war. We must at least try to be peacemakers, to diffuse conflicts all around us. It is an opportunity to wear a symbol that reminds us of the trauma, the traumatic horrors and cost of war. We reminisce about war in the first place in an effort to pursue peace, to dream of a world where war will be eradicated.
Chris Karagianis Memorial. Whether you're from the junior or the senior school, it's very important to remember. If you're from the senior school, we invite you to come and leave a poppy at the memorial.